Welcome back to the End Times News Report. I'm Jake Morphonios. I've got a great show for you today, lots of deep intel that I think you're going to enjoy. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about covert operations in Somalia and how these operations are connected to the administration of President Donald J. Trump, to former NSA Chief Michael Flynn, the government of Qatar, and to a Rothschild oil company. So back on April 30th, I published a video about covert activities, operations by the CIA there in Somalia. And I said at the end of the video to keep your eyes open that we were about to start hearing more about this activity in the near future. Well, it didn't take long. Actually started showing up in the news quicker than I expected. A U.S. soldier was just killed a few days ago outside of the Somalian capital of Mogadishu. Let's go back 5 weeks ago. President Donald Trump expanded military counterterrorism operations in the Horn of Africa. That's on the east side, of course. The operation that I'm talking about took place in Bari, Somalia. That's about 40 miles west of Mogadishu. And that's where the soldier was killed. According to U.S. Africa Command, the U.S. forces were conducting an advise and assist mission. They were working alongside the Somali National Army. And apparently the group had tried to carry out some kind of raid against an al-Shabaab camp when the death of the soldier took place. The U.S. Africa Command, which is called AFRICOM for short, they say that al-Shabaab is a threat to America, that Americans have reason to fear al-Shabaab, that American interests are in jeopardy, and that's why they're going after this terrorist network. Though I'm not quite sure how they figure out that a pack of extremists like way over there in a dump like Bari, Somalia, is somehow a threat to the United States of America, the greatest empire in world history. Come on, people. We are so far away from Somalia, it's just insulting that our government thinks that we're so stupid as to believe that we are at some significant risk from a band of thugs in Eastern Africa. So why are we in Somalia, if not for American security? Well, ask yourself, why is the United States anywhere in the world these days? Well, it's all about oil. Somalia has vast oil reserves. I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret on the oil exploits that are going on over there and how the CIA is involved. Back in 2013, the CIA set up a huge intelligence headquarters, set up in Mogadishu, which is the Somali capital. And they've been pouring funds into an effort into building up Somalia's intelligence infrastructure so that the CIA can co-opt and use it to its own advantage. America has also quietly built a new secretive military base, which is 70 kilometers southwest of Mogadishu. And this base is huge. It is so big that it can accommodate up to 100,000 U.S. troops. This is big. And I have read reports online from a number of local citizens who report that they have been seeing not only a big influx of U.S. troops into the area, but also increasing numbers of private mercenaries who have been contracted to help provide security for big oil contractors that are coming in to Somalia. My source also tells me that the CIA has constructed 2 other facilities, and these are underground facilities there in Somalia. They function like Guantanamo Bay rendition centers. One of the facilities was built, they had to blast through solid rock at the end of an airport to build this facility. And every night, landing on this airstrip are CIA transport planes. They're bringing in some kind of classified loads. I haven't been able to get any intel on what the content of these deliveries is, what they're bringing in each night, but I would suppose, given the nature of this facility, that they're probably bringing in alleged terrorist fighters, bringing them in to torture and try and get some intel on them. Well, the other of the 2 facilities has got its own name. It's called the Hole. In Somali, it's called Godka. And this facility was built underneath the presidential palace. The United States has basically taken over Somalia. because Somalia is a great geostrategic location in this region. It's located down in the mouth of the Red Sea. There is Yemen. We've got Saudi Arabia. We've got Iran. So a lot of hot spots down in this area. So it's a great staging ground. And it hasn't been that hard to gain control over Somalia. The nation's president up until February of this year was a guy named Hassan Sheikh Mohammed. He's probably the most corrupt president in the history of Somalia. You guys have heard me mention in the past that the little oil and banking nation of Qatar has helped to fund ISIS and other terrorist groups in Syria. Well, Qatar has also put up $20 million to get Hassan Sheikh Mohammed into power as president. And in return, Hassan grants Qatar control of Somali oil resources. And I'll just say this real quick. I know somebody out there is going to criticize me for how I'm pronouncing Qatar. I know it's pronounced with a glottal stop, Qatar, but I'm not going to sit here and pronounce it like that because it feels silly. So lay off. So before Qatar bought this presidential election for Hassan, there was another guy in there, a president named Sharif Ahmed, and he had set up this oil team to oversee oil contracts for the nation. And when Hassan took over, he kept this same team in place, but what he had the team do was declare all existing oil contracts null and void. They were going to start over from scratch, reneged on everything. And also that prior president, Sharif Ahmed, had appointed an advisory team, a team that was exclusively from Britain, put this British team in charge of handling oil acquisitions for Somalia. And this team has a name. It's called Norton Rose. You can look them up, Norton Rose. And coincidentally, or not, Norton Rose is also the advisory team for the oil companies owned by the Qatari royal family, as well as the state-run Qatari Investment Authority. Remember that. We're going to talk about that a couple more times, the Qatari Investment Authority. So what's happening is that Norton Rose has not only helped to write the oil policy for the nation of Somalia, for its government, but they are facilitating control of that Somali oil into the control of Qatar. So I'll be a little more specific on this. The Qatar Investment Authority handles foreign investments for the nation. A big part of their investment includes a lot of ownership and stock in the Royal Dutch Shell Company. The Qatari government they've just put in a massive amount of money, huge spending spree that started around 2012, and they have bought up millions and millions of shares in the Shell Oil Company, so that today Qatar is the single biggest shareholder of Royal Dutch Shell stock. So it is very much in their interest to see the profits of Shell go up. The rule, of course, is when possible, buy low, sell high. So they bought the stock anticipating that something was going to happen to cause that stock to go up. Okay, this is insider trading in a sense. So what's happening is that Norton Rose is helping to facilitate all of this so that Qatar can make this money. It's a multinational, Royal Dutch Shell. It's headquartered in the Netherlands, but it's incorporated in Britain. All right. At the same time that Qatar was dramatically increasing its investment in Shell oil, we've got the British-based Norton Rose team that was granting control over the Somali oil contracts. They were doing it through this puppet president that Qatar had put into power that they bought. They bought the election for him for $20 million, basically. And President Hassan even appointed his own nephew, speaking of Trump-type nepotism, putting his own family in charge of things. President Hassan of Somalia had put his own nephew in as the Minister of Natural Resources for the Somali government. And it was through this nephew that Shell was able to establish a monopoly over the Somali oil resources. They totally shut out all of the other exploration firms that were wanting to come into Somalia, that were trying to get in in on the action. So do you see how this works? This is some dirty, dirty business. And the corruption is continuing with the new Somali president, this guy that was just put in February. Just like Donald Trump made the CEO of ExxonMobil our Secretary of State, right? The new president of Somalia has appointed the director of a British oil firm as the new Prime Minister of Somalia. Funny how that happens. This kind of corruption that we're seeing is to be expected, though. This kind of control over entire nations is evidence that forces even more powerful than national governments is in charge of nations on a global scale. And Royal Dutch Shell is clearly working in collaboration with the royal family of Qatar. They have taken over the oil resources of Somalia by installing these political puppets. It's important to know the Rothschilds control Royal Dutch Shell, and that's not some conspiracy theory. You can go to Shell's own website, official website, go to the About Us page, and you'll see how they talk about how the Rothschild family invested heavily in the 1880s and how the Rothschilds have played a major role over the years in the development of this multinational corporation. And understand, the people who control multinational corporations, they're not loyal to any particular nation. They're not nationalists, they're globalists. Their loyalties are first and foremost to themselves, not to the nations in which they reside. That's why you can't trust these people. That's why there are key players in this scheme that are from all kinds of different countries. We can go from Qatar to Turkey to Britain to the United States. And this scheme provides not only vast amounts of riches, right, to the people investing, the people involved, but it also provides the United States with control over Somalia. It gives us a staging ground to expand operations even further against nations like Yemen and Iran, which are just right across the pond there from Somalia. And it all goes back to oil. You know, think of it, that this U.S. soldier that was just killed, in the midst of all this evidence that the New World Order is working to take control of more oil resources in this region, why is it that the U.S. government is sending the CIA and the military in to fight some ragtag group of terrorists like Al-Shabaab? It goes back to the oil. Let me read to you from a major study that was presented to the government of Kenya not long ago. And you may know Kenya is that southern neighbor. They border Somalia to the south. And this study that was given to the Kenyan government says this, quote, "The threat of Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda terrorist attacks on the critical infrastructure oil pipelines in Kenya has brought to the attention the strategic issue of the energy sector security, highlighting the potential vulnerabilities of this sector. Critical infrastructure protection should be a key component of the national security. The objective of terrorist and extremist groups is no longer to overthrow central government and gain civil rights which were denied to their social, ethnic, or religious group, but to establish and retain control over resources." So I hate to have to say it, but that U.S. soldier who just died, he did not get killed fighting to make Americans safe, which was the claim of AFRICOM. That soldier gave his life because the CIA needed the U.S. military troops to go in and wipe out Al-Shabaab extremists who pose a threat to the oil revenues for a Rothschild oil corporation. That soldier's blood was payment for oil. That's the truth. And Donald Trump knows all about this dirty oil dealing. He's got his own hands covered in that soldier's blood, in my opinion. I know that'll tick some of you off for me to say that, but I don't care. I'm more concerned about the feelings of that soldier's families rather than those of you who are diehard Trump supporters who think the man can do no wrong. The most powerful person, think of this, the most powerful person after the U.S. president in our government, practically speaking, it's the Secretary of State. So it's supposed to be the Speaker of the House, but thanks to the Council on Foreign Relations, the true second in command in the U.S. government is the Secretary of State. And it's no coincidence that Donald Trump chose the CEO of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, to be that second in command in the U.S. government. It's also no coincidence that the very first day after being sworn in as president, Trump went down to the CIA headquarters and gave a speech to them in which he said that after the Iraq War, the United States should have just seized its oil all for ourselves. And in that same speech, he told his new CIA director and all the people in the audience that, here's the quote, "Maybe we'll have another chance," talking about taking oil from other nations. It's no coincidence that after this, Donald Trump authorized the rapid increase in troops there in Somalia, and he gave the green light to aggressive military action against al-Shabaab. It's all about oil, folks. It's all deal making. It's not about making me and you safe from terrorists. It's about making money off of oil. Trump had been talking about the USA making money off of oil from other countries by taking it all throughout his campaign. I know you guys remember this. So after he won the election, surprise, surprise, here we have Qatar, who sees what's going on, sees the potential here. This is the same nation that bought the Somali presidential election to facilitate their Shell oil scheme. The Qatar Investment Authority, remember, they bought all that Shell stock. And they decided to announce to Donald Trump that Qatar is going to invest $10 billion in Trump's proposed infrastructure projects inside the United States. Qatar is going to help rebuild the U.S. infrastructure, the very thing that Trump was campaigning on. And of course, I mean, there's no quid pro quo here, right? Qatar doesn't actually expect anything in return for $10 billion, does it? You don't think they actually want something back, do they? It certainly wouldn't expect, say, Donald Trump to respond by committing the U.S. military in Somalia as a police force to get rid of al-Shabaab terrorists or anyone else who posed some kind of threat to the Shell Oil Company's profits, right? It's not like Donald Trump hosts a Qatari state-run business in Trump Tower, which is owned by the Qatar Investment Authority, right? Wrong. The government of Qatar, in case you don't know this, the government of Qatar pays President Trump office rent for Trump Tower to house the state-run Qatar Airways. And that's a direct violation of the U.S. Constitution's Emoluments Clause. It's supposed to prevent federal employees and the U.S. president from accepting any kind of foreign payments or money, anything whatsoever that could compromise the president. But I'm not half as concerned about Donald Trump taking some rent payments from Qatar as I am concerned with the very suspicious correlation between Qatar's massive funding of Trump's infrastructure projects and Trump's sudden increase in military action in Somalia that directly benefits Qatar by ensuring uninterrupted oil profits for the Royal Dutch Shell Company, which Qatar has massive investment in. Remember, all throughout that campaign, he said he was going to repair America's infrastructure. This is one of his big promises. You know, he's a real estate guy, builder. But back in March, Donald Trump gave a speech to the U.S. Congress about these plans, about all the repairs that he was going to do and all the stuff he was going to do to fix America. And he estimated that it was going to cost $1 trillion to rebuild America's infrastructure. But where is that money going to come from? Donald Trump couldn't even get the U.S. Congress to earmark money to build his Mexican border wall. He didn't even try to fight the Congress because he knew it was a losing battle. And if he can't get money for that, how is he going to twist their arm and get $1 trillion from them? It's not going to happen. So Trump has to have that $10 billion from Qatar and a lot more if he can get it. And other people outside the United States are aware of this compromising situation that Trump is in with Qatar. There's this one journalist, Shazar Shafkat, who writes for MiddleEastEye.net. And he wrote, and this is just a week after Trump took office, He said this, quote, Qatar, which is a major player in the Middle East and a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, is currently sitting on the sidelines waiting for Trump to make the initial move. He may have already done so, all to the good of Qatar. There's this other person you should know about. His name is Roger Hager. He's the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, their branch in Qatar, the Qatar branch. And he said that Trump was going to give Qatar a, quote, unique position within his administration. And Hager correctly pointed out this, quote, many of the generals and members of the Trump cabinet have been in Qatar at some point in their lives, so it is going to be a much different environment. And he's speaking about how we're going to see a lot of help being given to Qatar from Trump. So anyway, one of these generals that Hager mentioned, you guys may not know this, was General Michael Flynn, Trump's original NSA chief. He spent time in Qatar working with the Qatari government. General Mikey Flynn. This is the military intelligence spook who made it a whopping 23 days in the administration before having to be fired by Trump after he got caught wheeling and dealing illegally with Russia. Flynn's connections to Qatar also link him to the Russian state oil company Rosneft. Flynn was dirty. Flynn was also a highly paid agent for the Turkish government. That's not some theory of mine. You can look this up. It's mainstream news. Flynn actually filed paperwork with the U.S. government declaring himself to be a foreign agent for Turkey. And among the many things that Flynn is right now being investigated for is for a meeting that he had last year during the campaign season. He met with senior members of the Turkish government when they were talking about a plan to illegally kidnap a guy named Fethullah Gulen and deliver him secretly to Turkish President Recep Erdogan. You guys may have heard of Gulen. Right now, he's in Pennsylvania. But Gulen is a CIA asset. He's a guy that the deep state has tried to use to overthrow the government of Recep Erdogan in Turkey. Okay, so naturally, Flynn's work on behalf of Erdogan was at odds with the CIA's goals to take out Erdogan, because Erdogan was starting to cozy up with Vladimir Putin and Russia, making some oil deals with them. But that's a story for another time. I hope that you all have been able to see from what I've shared in this video that there's a whole world of secrecy and intrigue with plots and schemes that link powerful multinational oil corporations with foreign governments and with the CIA. This is the real military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address to the nation, although it would probably be more accurate to describe the network as the military-industrial intelligence complex, because it's the work of the CIA on behalf of the New World Order through the Council of Foreign Relations that is the primary agitator, the primary mover here in all of this. These conspiracies are extremely dangerous. Our military and our very government is being manipulated by powerful, powerful global players. They own our politicians, and these people's influence reaches down into the homes of every man, woman, and child in America. So if you care about these issues, please help me to open the eyes of our fellow citizens by sharing this video with your friends, with your family, with your social networks. And I also hate to say it, but lately I've been losing Patreon supporters rather than gaining them. So if you care about journalistic investigation, understand I cannot keep this channel going without funding, since Google AdSense, of course, has killed all our channels. We just don't make any money anymore. We rely solely at this point on the generosity of our viewers. So I would love your support at patreon.com/endtimesnewsreport or paypal.me/endtimesnewsreport. Thank you guys so much for watching. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.